Hey, good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be tuning in from. Hello, everyone who is joining me live on Fireside, and hi to everyone who's watching the replay. Um, so it is March 15th today, and one of the most amazing things happened last week is I actually got my taxes done. So for those of you who may not be in the US, our tax season or our tax date or deadline is April 18th this year. And this is the first time I've actually gotten everything put together. And so it got me kind of thinking, just well, one, it's a time of reflection and measurement. How did you do last year compared to the year before? Like, what are you going to do this year? All of these questions. And I've come a long way. Um, Taxes are still a struggle. I'm getting systems in place to be able to make them more efficient, but it's changed. Things have changed drastically from when I first started my business. And so I think um, a big part of that has been financial literacy and continued growth in education, and not just in taxes, but just in money in general. And one of the things that I have realized over the last year or so is that money is not something, at least in my experience, that is freely talked about or discussed. It's almost rude or invasive or inappropriate to talk about money. And I was taught this at a very, very early age. And there are certain etiquette and things like that. Obviously, if you're gawking at something that somebody purchased, and you're like, oh my gosh, how much was that? That's one thing to ask to ask because you're curious, because you're interested in what it would take for you to purchase it, versus just kind of being a little nosy or there is a rude way to ask about it, and there's a genuine way to do it, and there's a time and a place for everything, right? But it was one of those where when I was growing up in a lot of the companies that I worked for, and it could still be the same. Um, One of the policies for human resources was you don't talk about your compensation and you do with your coworkers. You just don't. That was actually grounds for termination. And I can kind of see where they're coming from, but at the same time, it's one of those where it's kind of twofold. And I'm not an HR professional, so anyone come at me, explain to me why. I'd like to learn. And I say come at me. I mean, like, please don't yell. I mean, I guess you can, but um, it's one of those where it's like it gives the impression on the employee side of an uneducated person's side, right? The initial interpretation that I have with it is, if we're not supposed to be talking about compensation with our peers, what are you hiding? Because like what and with the understanding that everyone has a different educational background, work experience, um, they have a different level of performance. Like, everybody is unique in that way, and how they're working and functioning. But at the same time, if person A and person B, or person A and person one, I guess I should say, are both performing the same job, and it's more of an apples to apples, like, why aren't they allowed to talk about what they're making? Or why couldn't someone at an entry level position speak to someone in management or higher leadership position, and ask about that compensation? Because maybe they want to advance, maybe they know what they want to make, or what they need to make, and so they want to see what kind of workload that means in that current company. So that's a thought or a question I have. Um, and so, like, if you have thoughts and opinions about this entire talk, or you can answer that question for me, feel free to DM me on Instagram or Twitter. It's Ashley Smith IRL on both platforms. Because I do. And the thing is that, and my point is that money is something that we're not supposed to talk about. Like, we're conditioned, at least my generation was conditioned to not talk about money. And so it's different now. You know, where when I first got my first one of my first big kid jobs, right? 10 years ago, it was one of those where you're not supposed to talk about it. And now it's you know, younger millennials and Gen Z are coming out of the gate going, no, we're going to talk about money and we're going to talk to our peers about money and we're going to see what each other's making. Um, and, along the trends of quiet hiring and quiet quitting and all this stuff. And the thing is how are you supposed to learn or how are you expected to learn about money if you're not talking about it, if you're not asking questions? Because not everyone comes from like the first people that you learn from are your family and your friends. And they might not know the information. So then you have to go outside. And yes, we have the internet to teach us about all of these things. But at the same time, it's just how else are you supposed to learn if you're not talking about it? Or your situation might be completely different from a friend's or a colleague's or a family member's, but they might know something or someone that can help you. And this kind of thing comes from the fact that uh, even just, in this past week or two, I have a couple really close entrepreneurial girlfriends, and we talk about it or complain about it. One of the two, or express our frustration and talk about confusion, what's going on, um, with business and how are we supposed to be structured as an organization and how does that show up on taxes? And one of the questions is, when do you do that transition? And so when I started my business, I started taking random clients to have some extra money. And so and by the way, I should probably say this. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an HR professional. This is just sharing my experience. And none of this is meant to be taken as professional advice. Please speak to your team as a business owner. And I believe that you should have a team of individuals that you can go to because everybody's situation is different. I started out, for example, and getting back to the main point of this whole thing, I started out as a just doing this on my own, and nowhere in my brain did I think that I needed to do something different on my taxes until tax time came, and I realized I had to do something different for my taxes. And so it was a lot of self-learning and a lot of and then finding someone or a tax person that would help me out with this. Um, and without going into like all of the gobbledygook, my business is structured as an LLC, so a limited liability company. So my personal assets are protected in case my business were to get in trouble, essentially, is what that is. I have a low level of risk and I mitigate that through the processes and procedures I have with my clients. So there's like, it's always about, being able to protect yourself, because the last thing I wanted was for someone to sue me and then they take my house and my car and everything. So that's why I structured as an LLC, and my income wasn't high enough to go into an S um, corp or a C corp type structure. Um, it may not be now. I'm scheduling tax planning, a tax planning meeting when the season calms down, to figure that out for myself. But so one of the difference, and everybody's situation is different, right? Because I don't have a lot of overhead because I currently work out of my home. Uh, but and then I also don't have any inventory. I don't have any physical inventory. All of my things are service based or it's a digital product, and there isn't anything tangible with that. So there's a lot of different things happening with my business versus one of my gal pals who's incredible. She's one of my best friends, met on Clubhouse, uh, who owns a cocktail kit business and does virtual events and things like that for companies and organizations. She has inventory. Not only does she have inventory, but she's working with alcohol. So there's that versus another friend of mine who is a in the finance industry. she works for another organization, but then she also has other things coming in, or however, or how that is structured. She needs to be looking at what that means for her. Her husband also owns his own business. My husband is a W-2 employee. So there's all of these different factors that make it completely different. Another girlfriend of mine is a IT consultant for asset management. So what that means is she basically helps organizations keep track of the hardware and software licenses and equipment on, laptops, computers, servers, Microsoft Office software, like all of these things, and consults them on network security and network structure and things like that. Um, but her husband is also W-2. So there, and but she's also making more money than I am. So it's all of these different things that happen. But we don't talk about money. We don't, I found some people that are a safe space to talk about money, and I talk about money with the kids all the time. Less about the business side and more about, saving and budgeting and how much things cost and what they can do or based upon their goals and what they should be doing, and, kind of trying and guiding them and sharing that information there. We're even talking about retirement with the kids. And we have 16, soon to be 18, and 21 in our household with uh, and so each of them are going through different phases of life and have different goals. But one of the things that we are talking about is saving for retirement and saving for early mistakes that we had made, hoping that they don't. Um, from a business standpoint, I I think one of the struggles that I had, and what several other entrepreneurs have had, is the constant, or soon to be, or aspiring entrepreneurs, or people who want to start a business, but are worried about the hills and the valleys in money, right? Because that is scary, and that was why it was a um, a part-time revenue stream for me for several years before I went full time, is because I was constantly concerned about what happens if I don't sell anything, what happens if my clients don't pay me on time, what do I do, like, what do I do if I don't sell as much as in one month as another month, um, all of these different things that impacted my income that I knew of from being an employee. Uh, Managing and operating the business was definitely different. And so a few years ago, a friend of mine told me about Profit First, a book by Mike Michalowicz. It's in the scrolly bar here on Fireside for you. And it the structure of that. Okay, so I have yet to actually buy the book. I need to buy the book. It's in my Amazon cart. But the structure of it, or the idea about it, is that it makes sure that you as a business owner are actually getting paid for owning the business. You're actually getting a paycheck, because what happens is either you are in the boat where you need to take all of the money out in order to pay your own bills and your own obligations, or you're using all of your business funds to take care of the business expenses and the business issues, and then somebody's not getting paid. Profit First makes sure that everybody gets paid. And what was great is that it gave me direction in where to put my money and how I was supposed to spend it. And it helped me figure out a budget. So, based upon your income, you have one, two, three, four, five different buckets. Okay. And this is a very high level overview, you guys. I encourage you to check out the book and look at this for yourself if you own a business. Um, Based upon your revenue range that you're making in, you will put in 5% into a profit bucket, and that's kind of like for yourself. Reward yourself as the owner of the company, for successful, for having a successful year. Bonus, ideally, that's kind of a tax deduction purchase, but it is what it is. Or however you want to spend that. 50% is is your paycheck. So if you sold $500, you pay yourself $250. Okay. And then 15% is set aside for taxes. And then 30%, the remaining 30% is the operating expenses for your business. So if you, and I'm bringing out a calculator because I'm bad at this. So that same $500 will gain your business $150 to use for operating. That's software, that's overhead, that's supplies, advertising, all of those different things. But it gives you insight into, are you charging enough? It tells you where to put your money or how to structure a budget. So say you're like, okay, well, I'm going to sell this much, and then from operating expenses, I'm going to invest 10% into marketing. So from this math, you'd put $15 into your marketing budget. It also lets you know if you can, if you can afford something. You look at you don't you look at your operating account and or your budget that you've created, and you know whether or not you can purchase a new office chair, or if you can, what budget you need to put together for um, the next continuing education course that you want to invest in, or a new computer, or whether or not your business can afford to hire another employee or a contractor or anything like that. So it really gave guidance for me as a business owner of what to do with my money. Um, because then, and it also helped, as you move up in revenue, that owner's pay percentage changes. But in the beginning, it's really easy to look at it or have the mentality and the mindset of, okay, I sold $500, I just made $250 for myself, right? Or I sold $10,000, I get 5,000, that kind of thing. And so it really helps with that. And it's just one of those things where so many people have tons of questions on how it works, especially because, and how, um, at least here in the United States, and I'm sure internationally, but I haven't gotten that far, personally, where it's like, okay, um, right now they're looking at increasing the federal interest rate here in the United States again. Um, why? Because of inflation. And the idea is that the higher the interest rate, it deters people from wanting to purchase so much, so that supply can get back up because the interest rate has lowered the demand because people are less interested in that. It's supposed to slow down home purchases or vehicle purchases and credit card charges and things like that, because that interest rate guides banks, credit unions, financial institutions on what they're going to charge for loans. So knowing that, which I didn't know before, um, is that's how you see, okay, you know when to pull back and plan, and you know how to use your money or how to leverage your money. And there's a lot of people who, a lot of things online and articles online about how wealthy people like debt. Now, they like debt that makes them money, and ideally that profit or the money that they're earning offsets the interest that they're paying. So what I mean by that is, if a business owner took out a $100,000 loan at a 5% interest rate, they would ideally make, well, 5% on that, would break even. So they make 10%. So if they're charged 5%, making 10%, then they are net earning 5% of income on that money. So they end up ahead. That's a very basic, simplistic way to explain it. There's I know that other people who are doing this, there's a little bit more involved. So I'm trying to keep it simple. Because again, not a financial advisor, should not be taken as financial advice. But this is kind of the attitude or the mindset that these people have with money is, okay, I'm going to be paying interest on it, but the money this loan that I'm taking out is going to give me an opportunity, or I'm going to be able to make way more profit than it's going to cost me to take out a loan. There's also certain types of debt. So it's not just all debt is good, it's certain types of debt. Um, for example, credit cards. Uh, they have a bad reputation, and they are. And for if you don't know yourself, and that's one of the stresses that I have with the kids right now as they're growing up, is for them to really think about and figure out the relationship with money, because I don't care what people say, it's an emotional one. Whether you are an emotional spender or an emotional saver, or you decide that you're going to help out your best friend, or like it's an emotional thing. And so it is very personal. Money is very personal. Um, and it's one of those where understanding the relationship that you have with money, understanding the lifestyle that you want to lead, and knowing what that's going to take financially. It's all numbers and it's all facts. It's very, very much a personal thing, but if you but it should be a logical thing. But knowing how I like to travel and how my husband likes to travel, we save up extra money when we go on vacations or business trips and things like that, because of how we like our experience to be. It doesn't necessarily mean that we won't go on a trip if we don't have that, but it's just we want to go to a restaurant and not worry about how much it's going to cost when we sit down for dinner. Or we like to take our family out to somewhere nice, or my parents out or his parents out and things like that, and be able to pick up the tab. Like there are certain things how we like to live and how it impacts us. Now, because we like to do those things, he and I are both a little bit more mindful of other areas and what we buy, right? So, an example is I don't get my nails done every week. Um, One, it's a time thing. Two, it's not really a me thing. Um, but it's also an expense that's my version of a treat or a pampering session, is going to the salon and getting my nails done every once in a while, or getting a pedicure. Things along those lines. That for other people, that's their lifestyle, so that's how they're going to do it. Um, in comparison, my lifestyle and my business has the added, I'm going to call it a perk because it's a perk for me. Um, the added perk of being involved in technology or requiring technology and different kinds of technology, even just Android versus iOS, right? And so that's where I like to spend my money, is on technology. Also with video content and streaming and other areas that I'm wanting to get into, graphic design, things like that, I require more expensive equipment to be able to run those software programs. Whereas someone else who is just doing email and Word documents and checking social media isn't going to need to spend thousands of dollars on a laptop or a PC. They're probably going to be fine with just a smartphone, right? So it's one of those of understanding who you are and your lifestyle, and that's what we're trying to stress with the kids so they can kind of figure that out. Um, our oldest likes to be social, and she likes to shop, and she likes to spend, and that's where her money goes. Um, and the middle one, she doesn't spend, she hardly spends a dime. But she spends it on video games or gifts for friends, or subscription based services. That's where her money goes. And then the youngest is saving, not a lot of expenses there, but she is looking at more big ticket items. She's interested in getting a nicer car when it's time to come buy a car. She's invested in an international trip to yeah, she's invested in an international trip to go on. And so there's just different things that come to it, and it's never just a cookie cutter thing. But I think it's also important to think about money and talk about it, even when you don't have any. And I know that that's a common thing. People who have money don't have problems. Well, it's just a different set of problems. People who don't have money have problems. it's a different set of problems. Trying to figure out how to make more, trying to figure out how to take $10 and turn it into 100. Um, it's just conversations that need to happen, right? But one of the things about money is it means you have to be brutally honest with yourself. And that's what I found out. And is that I had to be brutally honest with myself on what I actually wanted and how I was going to do that. And the financial advice that I hate, but I also followed for a long time. You guys, I had 9 years of low income poverty life. Like, um, what one was, skipping your coffee, your bougie coffee. Yeah, I did that, and because it was expensive for me. And so I shifted my mindset to, again, same thing as manicures and pedicures. It was a treat. Or if it was one of those things where it involved me getting at 5 a.m., I was like, nope, I'm up this early. I deserve I deserve a coffee. That kind of thing. And but it was also leveraging the other resources available to me to be able to take that $10 and turn it into 100. It involved a lot of savings, a lot of money tracking, a lot of planning far out. I was a non-custodial parent, a single income household, and so when I got a tax return, um, it went into a savings account because that money that I received was going to pay for things like my car insurance premium, so I wouldn't have another mental bill, monthly bill. It also covered Christmas. So, you know, when that happened, I was like, okay, no, I my priority was to make sure that my kiddo got some decent gifts at Christmas time. So that's what I did with it. So, and some people listening to this might be going, yeah, that's a responsible choice. It's a great idea. Why don't more people do that? Because that's not their priority, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, other, I put it towards the credit card debt that I had. I put it towards a loan that I had. Um, you know, things like that. It was. Did I want to go out and just buy something brand new for myself? Absolutely, absolutely. But what outweighed the fun of and enjoyment of getting something brand shiny and new like that was the pain of the every day of making that bad financial choice for myself. I didn't want to do that. And some people, that's not an issue for them. And again, it becomes a very personal topic. Um, but that's kind of the initial conversation or that I had or wanted to share with you. And the resource again is Profit First, a book by Mike Michalowicz. Again, the actual spelling of the name is available here on the scrolling bar here on Fireside. For those of you who have any questions or this was an interesting topic, please feel free to reach out. Again, Twitter and Instagram as Ashley Smith IRL. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you so much and have a great day.